Welcome, Buff fans, to the latest edition of our opponent previews. I'm pleased to be joined by Keenan Cummings from WVSports.com. And Keenan, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. It's been fun with Colorado joining the Big 12 last year, meeting some new beat writers, and you're one. I've never met you before, so I'm looking forward to this conversation and also seeing you when the Buffs go out to Morgantown later this year.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Exciting times in the Big 12. Definitely fresh and interesting. West Virginia and Colorado have played a few times before, but yeah, that was a while back. So excited to kind of get renew things with some, well, I guess kind of for West Virginia's sake, around the same era, but Rich Rodriguez and of course with Deion Sanders.
Yeah, these two teams don't know each other that well. I think it was just a home and home about 15, 16 years ago, something like that. Before, I mean, West Virginia was not in the Big 12 at the time. Colorado was, and then Colorado leaves, West Virginia joins, and so a lot's happened since the last time they played. Uh, not only with these two programs, but with all of college sports. Obviously, it's very different. But I guess one thing that's the same as Rich Rod is the head coach. Although there was a long time in between that. So let me start there. How is everybody feeling about Rich Rod being back? I mean, he obviously led a really good era of West Virginia football, and left and has been a few places since then. But how do people feel about him being back?
I think generally there's a lot of excitement. When you think about West Virginia, it's a place where people really take a lot of pride in the sports teams. It is the sports team in the state. There are no professional teams. It is the draw. It's said that Morgantown on game day is the biggest place in the state. So
Yeah,
if that kind of puts it in perspective. So people have seen Rich, there were a lot of hard feelings. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that, the way he left, the way it all unfolded. But it's said that time heals all wounds. I'm not sure that's the case for every West Virginian. But since Rich has gotten this job, he's done, he's said all the right things. He's gone around, he's discussed it. And Rich has said this a lot. He kind of wishes if he could go back and do one thing differently, that he would have addressed the fans when he left, had a press conference. He was advised not to do that. So he didn't, and it just made things even worse in a sense. So after that, as time has gone on, I think people have really embraced it. And the biggest thing is West Virginia, for lack of a better term, has been stuck in a rut.
yeah,
Really since they joined the Big 12. They had a little run there with Geno and Stedman, went to the Orange Bowl, but since that point, there was a couple years with Will Greer where they had a chance, but it's been, a lot of me football. That's really the best way I can put it. And fans know that Rich Rodriguez has done this before. He came in and kind of rebuilt the program in 2001 and then had three consecutive years where they won at least 10 games. He's had success recently. Jacksonville State, he took that program from FCS to FBS and showed that, he can adapt. He can do that in today's college environment. So I think generally people are excited, more so that they know the brand of football that Rich is going to play. There's no
yeah,
questions about identity when it comes to Rich Rodriguez.
yeah.
They're going to run the football. They're going to play tough. They're going to outwork people. He lives that hard edge lifestyle. He talks about that all the time. It's very apparent. If you watch practice, if you're around him, it's not coach talk. He lives it, he breathes it, he eats it. And I think that that's something that really is going to connect with people.
Yeah, and Buff fans saw it a lot actually because he was coaching Arizona for a number of years while the Buffs were playing them in the Pac-12. So I mean, Rich Rod being a West Virginian too, I imagine that there are people that are excited about him coming home, right?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there definitely are. There was a big section of the fan base that, still followed Rich Rodriguez,
Yeah,
at his games, at his various stops. So it wasn't all, everybody's upset in the moment. But like I said, Tom heals wounds. And I think that we're to the point now where people are excited for this next chapter. I think you've
yeah,
got more people asking about what's happening next as opposed to what happened back in 2007.
yeah. Well, that's good, and West Virginia needs that, and the Neil Brown era was not. I did a written preview on the Mountaineers, a few weeks ago, and West Virginia, to me, from the outside, has never been really bad, but just not good, right? And like 6-7 has been common. Be 6-6, get to that bowl game, lose the bowl game. So that's been kind of common. So I imagine you mentioned that rut. That's what fans want to get out of, right? Stop being 6-6, 6-7. Let's get to 8, 9, 10 wins.
Yeah, this is a proud, proud program. West Virginia has the most wins all time without a national championship.
Wow.
So this is a school that really takes a lot of pride in their athletic programs. And I don't want to say that the rich era kind of spoiled people a little bit, but in my generation, it kind of did.
Yeah.
People kind of got accustomed to those 10-win seasons, competing for a title every year, and then out of nowhere, it kind of was, the rug was pulled out from under 'em.
Yeah.
So I think people want to get back to that. People, I think people are realistic. They don't expect West Virginia to win the Big 12 every year. They do expect West Virginia to contend. And too often that was not the case, under the former regime. And I have nothing bad to say about Neil Brown, the person. I think he's a great guy. But, when it comes to it's a results-based business. And I think he was 37 and 35 over his 6 years. That's just not going to get it done.
Yeah. And as far as this team, we were talking before we started here. This year's West Virginia team is very similar to the 2023 Colorado team that the Buff fans know of, because Deion Sanders came in and famously, flipped over most of the roster. I mean, there was 75, 80 new players that year. It was needed. Colorado was coming off; they were the worst team in the country. So anybody that those of us that cover it, like anybody that criticizes Deion for what he's doing doesn't understand what Colorado was. West Virginia has done the same thing. And obviously the era is different. The portal is different than it was even 2, 3 years ago. But you were telling me there's 75 new players on this team. And so it's hard to know what this West Virginia team is going to look like, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the biggest question. And this spring, we were able to watch the Gold Blue showcase. I wouldn't call it a game, it was more of a kind of a glorified scrimmage in a sense, but you know how that works now with these spring games. At least they had one.
Yeah.
But I think other than that, we got around 10 minutes of spring practice, and it was stuff that they don't even typically do. Rich basically admitted that, why would I show you guys anything right now with the transfer portal coming up and with all this poaching and everything that's happening. So right now it's kind of all word of mouth, what you hear, what trickles through a little bit, but there's a lot of unknown. Yeah, they've added 65 players. They kept 10 guys that Neil signed. So just completely, and then they had a lot of seniors last year too. A
Yeah.
lot of seniors, a lot of guys transferred out. So it's been practically nonstop movement since really the portal opened for West Virginia. They were even adding guys deep into May, and I'm not sure they're quite done yet.
Yeah. That's interesting. It makes it hard to really know what the team's going to look like, and especially when you look at the quarterback position. Just doing my research, they're pretty unsettled there. Nico Markle is a guy that people know around here. He grew up in Denver before going off to, I think, Arizona to finish off high school. Is he the guy at quarterback?
That is the question. I had a post on our message board the other day that said, other than who's the starting quarterback, what question do you most want answered? I think that my personal belief, and let's clarify, it's my belief, is that Nico is probably the front runner
Mhm.
heading into fall camp. But the way Rich Rodriguez operates is, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. He wants competition at all positions, and he's going to milk this thing as long as he can. West Virginia fans have seen this before. Everybody remembers Pat White. A lot of people don't remember that Pat White didn't start that season. He took over midway through the year. Now he was playing some, but Rich isn't afraid to use two quarterbacks. He's done
Yeah.
it multiple times. Hell, he might even use three if there's three guys he thinks he can win with. But I think that the experienced guys would be the ones that I would look to first. Mark Yule, Jalen Henderson transferred to Texas A&M, and then Max Brown. But they have some young guys they like too. Rich keeps saying, if I got three guys I think we can win with, we're going to find that out. They open against, an FCS team. So that's going to be, we're not going to find anything out there
Yeah.
really, regardless of who takes the first snap. But then they go to Ohio and play Pitt. I think by the time that rolls around, we'll have a pretty clear indication of how that hierarchy is going to be working.
Yeah, and obviously the game with the Buffs is going to be in November, so by then we're really going to
Yeah.
know at least the 2025 version of the Mountaineers what they look like. We do know they've got a start running back. Jaheim White is a pretty good player, one of the best running backs in the conference. But around him, what do they have offensively? Rich Rod loves to run the football, so it's nice to have a good running back. But what do they have around him as far as weapons and offensive line, things like that?
Well, I think the running back room is going to be fine. Rich Rodriguez over his career, if he doesn't find guys, he makes them.
Yeah,
And he's had success with running backs practically at every stop. Some guys that are practically unheard of, some guys that are highly recruited. So that's not really a concern. They have seven guys in that room, probably six, five that'll play. Jaheim White's obviously going to be a big piece to that. He's kind of a
Yeah.
near perfect fit for what Rich wants to do. Receiver, they had to kind of completely remake.
Yeah.
But they went out and got some pretty good guys. They got Rich's leading receiver at Jacksonville State, Cam Vaughn. He had a lot of interest from schools. They returned a few guys, Rodney Gallagher, Jaden Bray, who they had high hopes for under the former staff, but he actually got injured and only played around 120 snaps. So they got him back. The biggest question to me is going to be the offensive line. And I think that that is the concern. They lost their top six guys, and I think it was top seven of nine from last year.
Wow.
Not all of those were graduations, some of them were transfers. So they went out and got, I think it was 14, 15 guys to try to
Wow.
fill these holes. So most of the offensive line, you might have a couple pieces returning. Your center might be a returning guy, although he was the backup last year. He might be a returner, but pretty much the rest of your two deep is going to be new faces. So it's going to be how that group gels. And some of these guys arrived after spring ball,
Yeah.
that could be counted on to play major roles. So it all starts up front. Rich needs a more athletic, agile type of offensive lineman. They went out and targeted that. But as you found out, covering Colorado, the offensive line is always a crapshoot. I don't
Mhm.
care how highly rated you are.
Yeah, it's difficult, to piece together an offensive line through the portal, and we've seen that the last couple of years with the Buffs, and they're doing it again this year. I think they've got higher quality players, but we'll see. But it's hard to piece that together. Jaden Bray, by the way, awesome young man. I talked to him at media day, and it was fun to talk
Yes.
to him. But let's move over to defense, where they weren't very good last year, and from what I could tell, no starters are back, right? At least nobody that was starting full time. There might be a couple of spot starters back, but I think it's almost completely new, right?
I think there's two guys. Edward Vesterinen would have been a starter. He played the first two games, got hurt.
Yeah, that's right.
And Kiki Tarnu ended up starting quite a bit towards the end of the year, but most of the other guys are going to be fresh faces, transfer guys, younger guys. But they kind of got some, I guess, some ammo in the gun there. Rich went out and he made it kind of his mission when he got hired. He was going to get a really good defensive coordinator. He said it from day one. He got his guy. They were able to lure Zach Alley away from Oklahoma. He was the co-DC there, but he was calling the plays. And he reunited with Rich. He's been at him at several stops. Guy's had success pretty much everywhere he's been in his young coaching career. He's a guy that's aggressive. They want to force the issue, really multiple, like to kind of match their scheme to the opponent they're playing. So you're not going to see the same thing out there all the time.
Yeah.
Three, 4-man fronts, a lot of different coverages, a lot of different looks. We'll sometimes play three safeties, sometimes two. So they're going to mix it up. And I think that kind of aggression is what you want to see on the defensive side if you're going to have an offensive scheme that wants to just keep going tempo, tempo, tempo.
Yeah. So what do you think of this team? I mean, just from afar, like I think Rich Rod's going to get them going again. Whether it's this year or not, we'll see. And there are so many similarities to that 23 Colorado team that, as good as they were with Shador and Travis, things like that, it was hard to come together in that first year. Do you think there'll be some bumps in the road for West Virginia this first year with all the new faces and the new coaching staff and things like that?
It would be hard to imagine that there wouldn't be. You're hoping if West Virginia, you could start the season 3-0.
Yeah.
Going to Ohio will not be an easy game, although I know some people probably out there rolling their eyes. They got Iowa State a few years ago in the exact same situation. I think Rocco Beck was a redshirt freshman. They got them out there that way, and then Pitt at home, rivalry game. But it's a game that West Virginia's played Pitt 3 years in a row, and they've had the lead in the fourth quarter with a chance to win the game, and only ended up winning one of them.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of kind of closing things out there. And once you get into the conference schedule, it's pretty difficult. I noticed the projections for potential playoff teams out of the Big 12. West Virginia has to play six of those teams, but covering West Virginia for as long as I have, knowing what Rich Rodriguez is capable of, how he's shown the ability to adapt, I do think this is a team that can surprise people. You look on paper, you have to do all these projections preseason, which anymore, a lot of it's kind of gone by the wayside with all this movement. But naturally, you look at returning players who coming back, returning production. For me, I look more kind of the fits they were able to get out of the portal. Obviously, you got to hit on those.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on top of that, coaching experience. What have guys done in the past? Have they proven they can do this? So I know that this team's going to play hard, and that alone is probably worth, 1.5 wins at some point on the schedule.
Yeah.
So it would not be, I've seen people pick this team 16th. I will be utterly shocked if this team finished 16th, just
Yeah.
because of what we know.
Is this a bowl team? I mean, last year they were in a bowl and went 6-7, but they were in a bowl. Does this team go back to a bowl game?
That is a good question. I think if you're Rich Rodriguez in West Virginia, you're hoping.
Yeah.
That's the goal. I mean, definitely. He's not, and I give him credit for this too, because it would be really easy to say, we're rebuilding this whole roster, give us time. He's kind of laughed at the notion, this is a rebuilding year. They went out and tried to get these guys, and you can't sell fans on, hey, give us time in today's college
Yeah.
football. The
Yeah.
game's changed. So I think they expect to be better than people expect them to be. I think that that's obvious. I think that they're definitely expecting to go to a bowl. Now they're going to have to win some tough games. They got some tough road games.
Yeah.
Going to BYU is always tough.
Hmm.
Arizona State will be a tough game. And they got some tough games at home too. They got Utah, Texas Tech at home, and they have to go to Kansas as well. So there's some tough games, but I think it really for me for West Virginia, I think they're going to a bowl game if they win those first three.
Yeah.
If things get dicey in that, I think it can make things a little more interesting. But the important part is, regardless of what I think, I know expectations in that locker room are higher than that.
Yeah. A little easier to find 3 wins in the conference as opposed to 4 if you need that, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be an entertaining game, I think, when Colorado comes out there. I'm not looking forward to West Virginia in November. I wish that was a September game, like one of the first conference games. But
You never
hopefully the
know here
weather.
anymore, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes in November it's hot. I mean, it's been
Okay.
crazy. So it not no when I say hot, I mean hot for here. But
Yeah.
it's been crazy the last couple of years with the weather. Oh, it's been raining here all summer.
Yeah. I asked Jaden Bray at media day, I'm like, what's the weather gonna be like when we get out there in November? He kind of laughs and he goes, yeah, you never know. He goes, it could be
Yeah,
snowy. He goes, it could be rainy. Who knows? And so,
it's
um,
true.
yeah, I'm just buckling up for some sort of adventure in West Virginia. But it'll be fun. It'll be nice to. I'm not going to call it a rivalry, but it'll be nice to renew acquaintances, with West Virginia for the first time since I think it was 2008 and 9 is when they played.
Oh, 8 and 9. It was right after Rich left.
Yeah. Oh, so Rich was not the coach when they.
No, Bill Stewart coached those two games because
Oh,
I was
okay.
doing the math in my head and I was like, oh yeah, Rich left the year before.
Okay.
So
Okay. So that's nothing similar from before, but yeah, I know. At least the one here in Boulder was a big upset. The Buffs, upset a top 25 West Virginia team with I think it was a last second field goal here
yes.
in '08, and so and then West Virginia got them out in Morgantown. So, but it should be a fun trip out there. Look forward to seeing you out there, and yeah, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it, and good luck through your season.
Yeah. You as well. I think that for your listeners out there, I recommend you making the trip. There's a lot of things to do in Morgantown. It's a college town, it's a smaller town, but a lot of fun things. It's a really cool scene to catch a college football game too if you've never made it out this way.
Yeah, and let me ask you real quick for those if there's Buff fans that are listening and are thinking about traveling. From what I can tell, the easiest way to get there is fly into Pittsburgh. Is that right? Is there
Correct.
is there other
That that
airports or is Pittsburgh the way?
that would be the way. That
Okay.
that that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Because from there it's what, hour and a half drive?
Yeah, it's about an hour. It's 70 some miles. It's pretty straightforward too. You just go down 79 and you'll find Morgantown.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it should be a fun trip, and I know the Buff fans. There's always Buff fans that make the trip, and because they're always on the plane when I travel. So, looking forward to being out there. And Keenan, we'll see you in November.
Thank you, man.